I'm here with Rich Procter, author of The $1,000,000 Sticky Note, 3 Words That Can Change Your Life. Rich is a writer living in the LA area. He's worked in advertising, television, and location-based entertainment. The $1,000,000 Sticky Note focuses on the character of Joe Dolan, a guy who's had a run of bad luck that's brought him to the brink of ending it all. But when a stranger offers him a second chance in the form of 3 words written on a Post-it note, Joe is desperate enough to take it. Thanks so much for being here, Rich, to talk about your wonderful book. It sort of fits into a nice tradition of Christmas redemption tales. What made you decide to set it in the time that you set it in, at Christmas time of the holiday?
Well, I have to admit, I'm a sucker for Christmas redemption tales. Christmas is the time of year when we get to go back and crack open A Christmas Carol by Mr. Dickens. For about 10 years of my daughter's life, every Christmas, 5 days before Christmas, we open it up. It's got 4 sections in it. You know, it's got the 3 ghosts and then the redemption scene at the end. And we just roar into Christmas after that. You know, it's like all really, really great books. The more often you read it, the more you get out of it. And the thing I was trying to do with this book that Mr. Dickens achieved brilliantly, as did Mr. Capra when he made It's a Wonderful Life, is the idea that the more you revisit the book, the more you like it, because you like the emotional feeling you have at the end when Scrooge, you know, Dickens and Capra both make you work hard for that last scene. And then when you get it, it's like, oh yeah, it's just an exhilarating feeling. No matter, you know, it's coming, and you know, and it's like, but it's a real high. It's a kind of Christmas high. So I thought, you know, I'm a writer. I've got an idea about how to do this. I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to see if I can do one of these. And I'm pretty happy with the way it came out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story, and it does make you think about the power of story. Like you say, you know what's coming. It's like with a romantic comedy. Generally, you know in the first
Sure.
5 minutes it's going to happen at the end, but you still follow along because of the emotional payoff. Uh, is that one of the great strengths of the story form versus just telling somebody it's all going to work out or whatever?
Well, sure. I mean, if the filmmaker had come out at the beginning of The Wizard of Oz and said, well, now these characters are going to go on this really amazing journey, but don't worry, they're going to be okay at the end. You know, it's like, no, you've got to put them in. The key to it is that there is a template about how to do these stories, but you have to work with the template to make it both. The filmmaker Billy Wilder, great filmmaker, did The Apartment and all these wonderful films, Sunset Boulevard. He said the key to making a great film is to make it both surprising and logical. You know, stories, I don't know if you have Netflix, but so many movies on Netflix are logical but not surprising. I know exactly where this is going. Okay, blah blah blah. So people these days are so immersed in stories. By that I mean you can open up Netflix and see 10,000 films, you know, and that's just one outlet, you know. So you have to work hard to be surprising. But you're always working off the same, you know, you're working off the same template. You want to take a character. The character is desperate for logical reasons. The character thinks there's no possible way out. Then something shocking happens. In Scrooge's case, he's visited by the ghost of his ex-partner, Jacob Marley. He's utterly terrified about what's going to happen, but he understands his only possibility for any future happiness is for him to go through this gauntlet of terror. And he does. And the surprising part is the way Dickens continually brings up parts of his past that are traumatic and lets him see this. And he goes to a place he has never allowed himself to go. He goes to a place of grief. And he understands he's taken a wrong turn. And finally, he gets to the place where he thinks, oh my God, my life is completely wasted. It's terrible. I'm going to die. And then he gets a chance to, to save it all. So I worked in some of those beats, but I think in a surprising and interesting way, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting because it makes me think that, the story has a relationship with the person listening to the story or watching the story, and
Sure.
that person sort of compartmentalizes a little bit. Like they know the ending, they know how it's going to work. I mean, especially if you've read the book before, like Christmas Carol, or watched a familiar movie again and again, you know how it's going to end, but there's a part of you that ignores that fact and goes along for the story again. And each moment becomes another little revelation again, if you're open to that. So curious quality of
yeah, that's one of the things I wanted my book to be. Is I wanted it to be a book that people would, if they've got a flight from Chicago to Los Angeles, they could read the entire book and they want to revisit it and want to keep it and want to give it as a gift to friends, because it's a book you can go back and the message is empowering in a way where, just like Christmas Carol, we have to have that story. We have to have that message. Stories, are all about character change. How does the character change? And what Dickens does brilliantly is that he pulls off the biggest character change in literary history. He takes the most unredeemable character of all time, and he finds a logical way for that character to be redeemed and transform himself. We want to believe that power exists in us. No matter what we've done in our lives, we can find a way to make it better and to live successfully. I can't think of a more empowering story, so I copied him. without actually copying him, of course. Yeah. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think what you seem to be saying is that basically we see ourselves in these stories. If that redemptive quality, somehow we absorb it when we experience the story.
Sure. I mean, to give you a different example of how you can take that arc and do it in a completely different and wholly successful way, the way Christmas Carol works is that Scrooge is really a miser. He's really a terrible person. He won't contribute to the poor. He's like, he tries to torment his one worker. He won't give him a new candle for his workspace. I mean, Dickens really lays it on. Frank Capra takes a whole different approach with It's a Wonderful Life. His character is actually a nice guy and someone who is contributes to society. His problem isn't that he's evil. His problem is that he can't see himself for who he really is. And he runs into a life crisis, and he's naturally embittered by a series of things that have happened to him in his life. And then this really terrible thing happens, none of which is his fault. And he decides that his life has no point. The key to It's a Wonderful Life is, yes, if you ask people about the theme of the movie, most of them will say what gets said at the very end, which Capra plainly means to be the theme of the film, which is no man is a failure who has friends. But if you take apart the story and you actually look at the change in the character and what's happening there, that's not Capra's theme. Capra's theme really is no man is a failure who makes a friend of himself. Mm-hmm. Here's how I know that. As I said, these redemption tales are all about the change in the character. And the change in George comes when he says, I want to live. I desperately want to live. And then he ends up running down the street saying, I'm going to jail. Isn't it wonderful?
Mhm.
He has changed. He's not the embittered character we saw earlier. Suddenly, he's a new person. He sees life as being this amazing miracle, and he can see himself for being because Clarence has shown him all the good he's done in the world, how terrible the world would be without George.
Yeah.
So the reason we love that movie is because every year when we watch it, we can go back over our own lives during the last year and wait a minute, I in my ego is telling me all these bad things happened to me, and yet, I love my kids. Without me, they wouldn't have a father, they wouldn't have a home. I contributed at work. I did all these things which I tended to discount. But if I look at, I made the world a better place, and next year I can make the world an even better place. That's a really, really wonderful thing to be able to say.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point, really, that one of the reasons we return to some of these stories, and one of the reasons why they seem to resonate for so long, is that they have some hefty issues buried in the mix, even if it's even if it initially feels like a lighter kind of holiday fare. But I mean, well, it makes me think, in your book, you talk about a quote from Einstein, and there's this philosophical conundrum that's run through millennia of discussion. It's like the eternal yes or the eternal no,
Right.
like, and talk to me a little bit about the Einstein quote that you use in the book.
Well, Albert Einstein said, the most important question we can ask ourselves is the universe friendly? And I've got a series of quotes of other people who have basically said some version of, if you see the world as being a mean, angry place where it's impossible to live successfully, it'll be that for you. If you see the world as a place of abundance and love and opportunity, it'll be that for you. And Einstein, the reason that quote resonates with me is because when Einstein says he chose to see the world as being as the universe as being friendly, when you start looking around you and you basically see what's actually going on any in any moment on any day, there's air to breathe. You turn on your tap and there's clean water. You've got friends you can call. There's endless entertainment everywhere you look. John Updike had a wonderful quote where he said, "The world is a vast conspiracy to make you happy." And, if you look at life like that, then, I could go upstairs right now, open my refrigerator, and make myself my morning smoothie, which has, raspberries and blueberries and papaya and all these wonderful green vegetables, all of which are available at my local supermarket. The bounty of the world, things that are designed to make my body healthy and happy. I just can walk into the supermarket and grab them and bring them home. I mean, how amazing is that? Some of these berries come from like South America. I mean, it's I know it sounds I don't know. Sometimes I think that even I'm kind of a Pollyanna, but I really believe I completely believe what Einstein said. And reading his quote always brings me back to the idea that this is a world of abundance. And all we need to do is work with the abundance. The problem we're having now with global warming and climate change is that we're fighting the abundance. We are the ability to create an economy based on renewable energy is all there. We've got the technology. It's all there. It's going to require transition, but we aren't required to dig into the earth and grab coal and gasoline and all these things, and burn them and send carbon into the air. We don't have to do any of that. The universe is providing for us in every way. And the universe says, okay, if you want to do that, that's okay with me. That means that the temperature is going to go up. But so at any given time, we can open our eyes, take a really deep breath and say, I'm part of this amazing miracle. The most beloved play of all time is probably Our Town by Thornton Wilder. And then the third act, the characters who have passed away gather and they think about their lives. And one character has a chance to go back into her life for one moment. And the character says something like, it's just too much of a miracle. Like going back into it, just being alive, just in an average morning, having breakfast with her parents. It's like that moment is just so impossibly wonderful. It'd be so heartbreaking to leave it again. And every moment in the world is like that for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a curious quirk of the human mind to not always realize that, or to uh,
Yeah,
to allow yourself to sort of drift into mild depression, or to
sure.
not recognizing how nice it is to have a cup of coffee in front of you or a sunny day. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, our lizard brain is designed from the time we were cavemen to think the world is a dangerous place because there are saber-toothed cats all around us who want to kill us and eat us. So, from an evolutionary standpoint, this is a good thing because the people who thought that survived. But now we've evolved into a place where we don't need to think those things anymore. That's why there are stories like this in order to shake us out of this, the way we hypnotize ourselves, and to shake off that lizard brain and just open ourselves to the miracle of life.
To the endless possibilities.
Yeah, which are in front of us every single day.
So all of those ideas are rolled up into this book.
Yeah, hopefully, yes, yeah.
Who are some of your influences in terms of your thinking and your writing too?
Oh boy, let's see. Well, my first great passion was a guy named Ray Bradbury, science fiction writer. And somebody put one of his books into my hand when I was 12 years old, and it just opened up the idea of what a story could be. Certainly, the older I get, the more I go back to the classics. I've read all of Dickens. I've a big fan of Victor Hugo. Les Miserables is a story we're telling ourselves 300 years later. I am really fascinated by why stories last. What is it about those stories? And it always goes back to the most primal sort of values of what it means to be human. If you look at Les Miserables, it's about it's another story of injustice, social injustice, and redemption. It's about a guy who in a crisis in his life committed a terrible crime and redeemed himself. But there's this one character, Inspector Javert, who is, for his own good reasons, driven to punish this character. And so Hugo is asking the most basic questions. Is redemption possible? Can we forgive other people and ourselves? Those questions will always resonate.
Yeah, until the human race as a whole resolves them.
Yeah, I'm hoping one day we can resolve them, but I often think that life is this very strange race between our ability to destroy ourselves and our ability to redeem ourselves. Can our consciousness catch up with our technological ability? When the first atom bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, everybody took a very deep breath because for the first time they realized we have now created a way to destroy ourselves, to destroy all of humanity. And I think, that if you pick up the morning paper, it's still a question of, which side of our brain is going to win, the side that wants to destroy or the side that wants to love and create and live peacefully in this, world of abundance.
It's a very interesting question because it makes me just juxtapose the notion of an atom bomb going off and destroying all life, or the very small, precious moments that sort of make life worthwhile, like
Sure.
Character's relationship with his daughter in your book, for example.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, couple of years ago, they I don't know if you know about this Harvard study they did, where Harvard took one class, I believe it was the class of 1944, and they said, we are going to check in with these people every 10 years, and we're going to do a survey of how they're doing, and we're going to decide what it is that makes a successful life. John Kennedy was in that class. Mm-hmm. So basically, within the last 10 years, it finally got to the point where almost all of them had passed away. But they basically came up with a magic formula for success, they called it. And here's what they said. I got it in front of me now. They said the people who were successful had these qualities. Number one, they had a capacity for intimacy. In other words, they had a lot of friends. Second was they had a quality of persistence. They didn't give up. They were always willing to fight, even if the fight seemed impossible. Third, they had a sense of discipline. The two things that killed most of them too young was addiction to alcohol and addiction to cigarettes. If you could avoid that, if you could have the discipline of that, you could live a long and happy life. And finally, was dependability. It's not only having friends, but can you be a good friend to people? They said the men who could be affectionate about people and organized about things had very enjoyable lives. And at the end of the day, the number one thing was love. They said life is about love, full stop. Can you love? Can you be loved? Can you enjoy the love you have? Can you share love? Can you love rather than hate? Can you be a positive force in the world because you love the world rather than somebody who is bitter and angry and negative? And now you notice what's missing from all that. At no point in this survey did anybody say, you'll be happy if you have a lot of money, or you'll be happy if you're very successful in life and you head your own law firm. That was not their experience. They said people who weren't successful in terms of their careers, but still were, loving and dependable and disciplined and persistent, had very, very successful lives. And there were a lot of guys who became CEOs of major companies who drank themselves to death in their 50s. Mm-hmm. So, it's
not a super complex formula.
No, it's not. No, that's the beauty of it. I mean, if you look at these stories that we both love so much, there's nothing complex about them or impossible about them. The truth is always lying there in plain sight. The key when I did this book, I thought to myself, okay, I knew the story kind of turns on this sticky note that has 3 words on it. And I knew that was a hinge, but I knew the story wouldn't be important, or it wouldn't change their lives unless I took them through a journey into this guy's life that was extremely believable, really made them feel his anguish. And if, that's what Dickens does so wonderfully. If I could make them feel that when they got to the 3 words, those 3 words would have meaning for them. And then they would see the result of how those 3 words can turn you around. It's always, it's easy and it's hard. The truth is out there. It's not as, profound or unknown to us, but we have to keep hearing the same stories over and over again because we need them.
We need to pay attention to those
yes.
core.
We need to let ourselves let go of all that hate and anger and grief and be open to a renewal of the human spirit and the ability to get up off the floor and try again. Okay. Well, let me tell you where the 3 words came from. About 30 years ago, I was driving around. I was listening to National Public Radio, and they're doing a special feature on a woman who had written a book. She had interviewed 400 psychiatrists and psychologists. And she asked them a question like, what works in your practice? What did you learn that brings the most value to patients? And she said, well, it's really kind of shocking because when I was talking to these 400 people, they all said the same thing, which is that after being in a practice for a couple of months, we realized most of the things we had learned had no value, but there were three things that if we could get our patients to work with these three ideas, they could transform their lives. And so I heard the three words, and I pulled over and I wrote them down on a 3x5 card that I always carry around. And for 30 years, I turned those over in my mind, because whenever I came up to, I was trapped in a conundrum of life, inevitably I could use those three words to find my way out. They're three perfectly common words, but, it was so profound to me that all of these 400 people told this person the same thing, and none of them communicated with one another. They all had stumbled on these themselves. So that's where the three words on the sticky note came from. And you got to buy the book in order to find out. There you go.
All right, beautiful. Well, thanks. This is the $1 Million Sticky Note by Rich Procter, available at Amazon and elsewhere, published by Maurice Bassett. Rich,
thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. It's a great book, and I hope it's
good.
Present. All right.
That's right. Yes. Okay. Wonderful.
All right. Thanks
a
a
lot. Okay.